Hubers is accused of murdering her on-again, off-again boyfriend in 2012.
Having reviewed the evidence and applied the law thereto, now finds you guilty.
Beauty pageant winner Ruth Kamande over the murder of her boyfriend Farid Mohammed in 2015.
You were relentless, you stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed until he was dead.
Get ready to be shocked as we delve into the dark world of teenage relationships gone terribly wrong. In this video, we'll be counting down the top 10 cases of teen girls who have committed the unthinkable. But the story doesn't end there. We'll also be reacting to their life sentences and examining the justice system's response to these tragic crimes. This is not a video for the faint of heart. Number 1. Camia Gamet. Camia Gamet was found guilty of first degree in 2014 for the brutal assassination of her boyfriend, Marcel Hill. The incident took place in Jackson, Michigan, where they were living together at the time. Gamet claimed she acted in self-defense, but the jury rejected her argument and convicted her. During the trial, the prosecution presented evidence that contradicted Gamet's version of events. The court heard that Hill was repeatedly stabbed with multiple weapons, including a knife and a stiletto heel. The injuries inflicted on Hill were severe and led to his death. The prosecution argued that Gamet was responsible for taking Hill's life and that her self-defense claim was baseless. The jury agreed with the prosecution and found Gamet guilty of first degree. She was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. This punishment was due to the severity of the crime and the prosecution's claim that Gamet was a violent person who posed a threat to society. Gamet's defense attorney, Anthony Raduazo, appealed the verdict in 2015. He argued that the court had made several errors during the trial, including allowing the prosecution to introduce evidence that was prejudicial to his client. The appeal was unsuccessful, and the court upheld Gamet's conviction and sentence. In a statement following the appeal, Gamet expressed her disappointment with the verdict. She maintained her innocence and stated that the evidence presented in court did not prove her guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. She also claimed that the court had not given her a fair trial and that her defense team had been ineffective. Despite Gamet's claims, the court's decision was final, and she remains imprisoned. The case attracted widespread attention due to the brutality of the crime and the severity of the punishment. It also sparked debates about self-defense laws and the role of the justice system in protecting victims of domestic violence. Number 2. Shayna Hubers. Shayna Hubers is an American woman who gained notoriety for taking her boyfriend, Ryan Poston's life in 2012. Hubers was born on December 31, 1991 in Lexington, Kentucky, and grew up in a well-to-do family. She met Poston via Facebook. He was a successful lawyer. The couple began dating in 2011 and were together for 18 months before the assassination. Hubers was reportedly obsessed with Poston and had difficulty accepting their breakup. On October 12, 2012, Hubers called 911 and reported that she had shot Poston 6 times. Police arrived at the scene and found Poston dead in his home in Highland Heights, Kentucky. Hubers was arrested and charged with taking his life. During the trial, Hubers claimed that she acted in self-defense and that Poston was abusive towards her. However, her story was contradicted by evidence that suggested she had planned the assassination. Hubers had sent numerous text messages to friends before the incident, stating that she planned to take Poston's life. In addition, she had shot him multiple times, including in the face, indicating that she had intended to assassinate him. In 2015, Hubers was found guilty and was sentenced to 40 years in prison. The sentence was later overturned on a technicality, and a new trial was ordered. In 2018, Hubers was once again found guilty of assassination and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 14 years. Hubers' reaction to the sentencing was emotional. She broke down in tears. She also wrote a letter to the judge, claiming that she was innocent and that the real criminal was still out there. However, the judge dismissed her claims and stated that the evidence against her was overwhelming. The death of Ryan Poston was a tragic event that shocked the community. Hubers' actions were brutal and premeditated, and her attempts to justify her actions were unconvincing. While she will have the possibility of parole in the future, her life will never be the same again. Number 3. Nakeisha James. Nakeisha James was an 18-year-old teenager from San Bernardino, California. Her life took a dark turn on December 18, 2015, when she took the life of her boyfriend, Dorian Powell. The brutal crime took place at a house party, where James allegedly became upset with Powell after a dispute, leading to a physical altercation that ended with James attacking Powell multiple times. Following the assassination, James fled the scene but later confessed to the crime in a Facebook post. In her post, James wrote, "We were in a serious fight, and I ended up grabbing a knife and stabbing him. I didn't think I would cause him any harm, but unfortunately he passed away, and now I find myself on the run from the authorities. I'm sorry. I love you. Rest in peace, Dorian Powell. You didn't deserve this." Police were able to track her down and arrest her in connection with Powell's assassination. During her trial, James pleaded guilty to second degree, and in May 2017 she was sentenced to 16 years to life in state prison. In handing down the sentence, the judge noted the severity of the crime and the impact it had on Powell's family and loved ones. James's reaction to her sentencing was not immediately apparent. However, the case has garnered national attention, with many pointing to the tragedy as an example of the dangers of domestic violence and the need for more support for victims and survivors. The case has also brought attention to the issue of youth violence, with many questioning what could have led a young woman like James to commit such a violent act. Some have pointed to a history of abuse, while others have questioned whether mental health issues may have played a role. Despite the many questions that remain, one thing is clear. The life of both James and Powell were forever changed by the tragic events of that December night. While justice was served in the form of James's sentencing, the scars left by this crime will likely linger for many years to come. Number 4. Michelle Carter. Michelle Carter was a teenager from Massachusetts who gained notoriety for her role in the death of her boyfriend, Conrad Roy III. Born on August 11, 1996, in Plainville, Massachusetts, Carter grew up in a middle-class family and was known to struggle with anxiety and depression. Despite her mental health issues, she maintained a seemingly everyday life and was a cheerleader at King Philip Regional High School. In 2014, Carter began exchanging text messages with Roy, who was also struggling with mental health issues. The messages between the two grew increasingly dark, with Carter at one point urging Roy to take his own life. On July 12, 2014, Roy followed through on Carter's suggestion and died from carbon monoxide poisoning in his pickup truck. Carter's crime was not one of commission, but of omission. She was charged with involuntary manslaughter for her role in Roy's death, with prosecutors arguing that her texts had caused his death. Her trial, which took place in June 2017, was closely watched by legal experts and mental health advocates. On June 16, 2017, Judge Lawrence Moniz found Carter guilty of the crime. She was sentenced to 15 months in jail, with 5 years of probation following her release. However, Carter was allowed to remain free while she appealed her conviction. In February 2019, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court upheld Carter's conviction, ruling that her actions had caused Roy's death. In February 2019, Carter was ordered to begin serving her sentence immediately. Carter's case sparked widespread debate about the criminalization of speech and the responsibilities of those involved in online communication. Some argued that Carter's texts were protected by the First Amendment and that she should not have been held criminally liable for Roy's death. Others maintained that her actions were reprehensible and deserving of punishment. Carter's reaction to her conviction and sentencing was one of shock and disbelief. In an interview, she claimed that she was being punished for her words and that she did not believe that she had caused Roy's death. "I think that anyone would know that I didn't cause his death," she said. "I was the only one who was there to comfort him during all of this." She was seen sobbing during her sentencing. Number 5. Jodi Arias. Jodi Arias was a woman who became infamous for the brutal assassination of her ex-boyfriend, Travis Alexander. Born on July 9, 1980 in Salinas, California, Arias grew up in a troubled home and had a difficult childhood. Her parents were addicts, and they frequently fought with each other. Her mother was emotionally abusive, and her father was absent from her life. In 2006, Arias met Travis Alexander, and the two began a romantic relationship. They had a tumultuous relationship, and it was characterized by jealousy, arguments, and breakups. Alexander and Arias dated intermittently for a year and a half, often in a long-distance relationship, taking turns traveling between their respective Arizona and California homes. On June 4, 2008, Alexander's roommates found his dead body in his home in Mesa, Arizona. He had been brutally attacked with a knife and gun. Alexander's friend, who knew Arias, had an unfavorable opinion of her. They commented that the couple's relationship was strangely tumultuous, and Jody's behavior was problematic. The police investigation pointed to Arias as the prime suspect. After initially denying any involvement, Arias eventually admitted to taking the life of Alexander, but claimed that it was self-defense. However, the evidence presented in court showed that the assassination was premeditated. There were also explicit photographs of the couple taken on the day of the assassination, suggesting that their relationship was a factor in the crime. In 2013, Arias was found guilty of first degree, and in the penalty phase of her trial, the jury could not agree on the death penalty. As a result, she was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The trial gained widespread media attention, and it was one of the most watched criminal trials in recent history. During her trial, Arias showed a range of emotions, from crying and sobbing to displaying anger and defiance. She gave several interviews to the media, including a jailhouse interview with Inside Edition. In the interview, she claimed that she was a victim of domestic violence and that Alexander was abusive towards her. Jodi Arias will forever be remembered for her heinous crime and the sensational trial that followed. Her case serves as a cautionary tale of how jealousy, rage, and obsession can lead to tragic consequences. Despite her claims of self-defense, the evidence presented in court showed that she was responsible for the assassination of Travis Alexander, and she will spend the rest of her life behind bars. Number 6. Ezra McCandless. Ezra McCandless is a convicted criminal who made headlines in 2018 for the brutal stabbing death of her boyfriend, Alexander Woodworth. Candles was only 22 years old at the time of the assassination. Ezra McCandless was born in Missouri in 1995 and grew up in Nebraska. She was known to be artistic and creative with a passion for music and poetry. McCandless was also open about her struggles with mental health issues. She had attempted to take her own life multiple times. On March 22, 2018, McCandless arrived at a farmhouse near Eau Claire, Wisconsin, muddy, bloody, bruised, and shoeless. She claimed to have been assaulted and was in need of medical attention. However, her story quickly unraveled as investigators found her boyfriend, Alexander Woodworth's body, brutally assaulted on a dirt road near the farmhouse. McCandless was subsequently charged with his death. During her trial, McCandless claimed that she had assassinated Woodworth in self-defense after he had attacked her during an intimate encounter in his car. She claimed that Woodworth had become increasingly violent, leading her to use a knife in self-defense. However, prosecutors argued that McCandless had planned the assassination in advance, citing her history of manipulative behavior and lies. In February 2021, McCandless was found guilty of first-degree intentional homicide and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge called the assassination brutal and vicious and said that McCandless had shown no remorse for her actions. After the verdict was read, McCandless was sobbing but remained silent. However, in a letter she wrote to the judge before sentencing, she claimed that she had acted in self-defense and expressed her tearful regret for the pain and suffering caused to Woodworth's family. McCandless also wrote about her struggles with mental health issues, saying she had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. The case of Ezra McCandless shocked many, as her meek appearance and artistic background made her an unlikely suspect for such a brutal crime. Her trial shed light on the complexities of mental health issues and how they can lead to tragic outcomes. Number 7. Martina Oganovska. Martina Oganovska was a teenager who had been dating a man named Philip Jaskiewicz for only a few days when she took his life in October 2018. The incident occurred after a night out at a bar in Peterborough with Oganovska's mother and 2 friends. Oganovska and Jaskiewicz got into an argument in Jaskiewicz's car over his driving, and it escalated when Jaskiewicz began touching Oganovska inappropriately. Oganovska claimed that Jaskiewicz grabbed her by the neck and pushed her, causing her to fall to her knees. He then began touching her inappropriately while saying that she would be with him always. At just after 5 a.m., while parked, Oganovska attacked Jaskiewicz with a knife as he looked at his mobile phone. She ran off with the knife, and her 2 friends followed. believing she had punched Jaskiewicz. He was found dead by a member of the public about 2 hours later. The court heard that Oganovska knew precisely what she had done and had left Mr. Jaskiewicz to die alone. She had taken the kitchen knife with her and used it in the car. Oganovska took a taxi to Thorpwood police station with the knife and handed herself into the police at roughly the same time Jaskiewicz's body was found. During the trial, Oganovska denied assassination and having a bladed article, but was found guilty by a jury at Cambridge Crown Court. Oganovska, who was a mother of one, was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 17 years. At her trial, Martina's defense team relied on her allegation that she had been a victim of abuse by an older man when she was aged just 14. They argued that this incident had caused her significant post-traumatic stress disorder, which made her hypervigilant in response to triggers. But despite that, her actions were described as premeditated and unprovoked by the judge, and the court heard that Oganovska had a previous conviction for assault. In a statement, Jaskiewicz's family said that their lives had been shattered by the loss and that they were devastated beyond words. Oganovska showed no emotion as the sentence was read out. Her case raised serious questions about whether prosecutors were following their own guidance on assault myths when an alleged victim becomes a defendant. Number 8. Ruth Kamande. Ruth Kamande is a former Kenyan beauty queen who made headlines in 2018 when she was found guilty of taking the life of her boyfriend. The incident occurred on September 20, 2015, in Buru Buru Estate, Nairobi. She was born on November 20, 1994, and grew up in Naivasha. She attended Bishop Gatimu Ngandu Girls High School and later joined Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, JKUAT, where she was pursuing a degree in Business Information Technology. The assassination of Kamande's boyfriend, Farid Mohammed, a 24-year-old man whom she had been dating for a year, shocked the nation. According to reports, the couple had an argument over text messages on Mohammed's phone before Kamande attacked him with a kitchen knife. During the trial, Kamande claimed that she acted in self-defense after Mohammed attempted to assault her. However, the prosecution argued that Kamande acted out of jealousy after she found out that Mohammed had been flirting with another woman. After a lengthy trial, Kamande was found guilty of assassination and sentenced to death in July 2018. The ruling by Justice Jesse was based on the fact that Kamande had shown no remorse for her actions and had instead tried to cover up the crime by cleaning up the bloodstains and locking the door to the house. Kamande's case sparked a national debate on the death penalty, with some people arguing that the punishment was too harsh for a young woman who had the potential to turn her life around. However, others felt that Kamande had committed a heinous crime and deserved to face the full force of the law. Following her sentencing, Kamande broke down in tears in court, begging for mercy from the judge. She also apologized to Mohammed's family for her actions, saying that she regretted what had happened. Ruth Kamande's case is a tragic reminder of the dangers of domestic violence and the consequences that come with taking the law into one's own hands. While her case has generated controversy and debate, it is important to remember the victim and the impact that his death has had on his family and friends. Number 9. Kaylee Turnipseed. Kaylee Turnipseed, a teenager from Greensboro, North Carolina, made headlines in October 2021 when she was charged with first degree. The victim was identified as Turnipseed's boyfriend, whose name was not released to the public due to his age. According to police reports, Turnipseed allegedly assassinated her boyfriend and then asked her friends to help her clean up the crime scene. The police were notified of the incident by one of the friends who had been asked to help with the cleanup. The victim's body was found in a wooded area in Guilford County, and Turnipseed was arrested shortly after. The prosecution claimed that Turnipseed confessed to the crime when she was taken into custody. No motive was discussed. Turnipseed was denied bond due to the allegations that she attempted to cover up the crime. The motive for the crime is still unknown, and the investigation is ongoing. Turnipseed's background is not known to the public, and it is unclear what led her to commit such a heinous crime. In December 2021, Turnipseed appeared in court and pleaded guilty to first degree. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge presiding over the case stated that Turnipseed's actions were cold-blooded and premeditated, and that she had shown no remorse for her actions. Upon hearing her sentence, Turnipseed reportedly showed no emotion and simply nodded her head. Her family and friends were also present in the courtroom, but they declined to speak to the media after the sentencing. The case has garnered attention from the local community and beyond. Many people are wondering what could have driven a young woman to commit such a heinous act. Some experts speculate that Turnipseed may have been struggling with mental health issues that went untreated. It is not uncommon for young people to experience mental health challenges, especially during the tumultuous teenage years. Unfortunately, many young people do not seek help for these issues, and they can escalate to the point of causing harm to themselves or others. The case of Kaylee Turnipseed serves as a tragic reminder of the importance of seeking help when struggling with mental health issues. Kaylee Turnipseed's case sheds light on the consequences of violence and the importance of seeking help when struggling with mental health issues. It is hoped that justice has been served for the victim's family and that Turnipseed's punishment will serve as a deterrent for others who may consider committing similar crimes. Number 10. LaVonna May. LaVonna May was just 19 years old when she was charged with taking someone's life in 2016. She was accused of convincing her boyfriend and a friend to help her beat a man to death, claiming that he had assaulted her. LaVonna May's background was not well known, but according to reports, she had a troubled childhood. She had spent time in foster care and had been in trouble with the law before. She was described as a troubled and vulnerable young woman who had been taken advantage of by the man she and her accomplices had assassinated. The crime that LaVonna May was charged with was particularly brutal. She and her accomplices, 22-year-old Jack Williams and 21-year-old Kaylee Woods, lured 20-year-old Kyle Ewell to a park in Kent, England, where they attacked him with knives, a screwdriver, and a broken bottle. Ewell was left with 140 injuries, including a severed spinal cord, and died at the scene. After a trial that lasted 4 weeks, LaVonna May, Jack Williams, and Kaylee Woods were all found guilty of assassination. They were each sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 20 years. The judge who sentenced the trio called the assassination senseless and barbaric. He noted that LaVonna May had been the driving force behind the attack and that her boyfriend and friend had been willing and active participants. He also noted that the victim, Kyle Ewell, had not been an assaulter, as LaVonna May had claimed, and that the attack was entirely unprovoked. In the aftermath of the trial, LaVonna May showed little remorse for her actions. She was reported to have made a number of threatening comments towards the family of the victim and even smiled and laughed as she was led away from the courtroom after being sentenced. The case of LaVonna May, Jack Williams, and Kaylee Woods is a tragic example of how young people can become caught up in violent and senseless crimes. It also serves as a reminder of the devastating impact that such crimes can have on the families and loved ones of the victims. At the time of the assassination, LaVonna May was only 19, and her background indicated that she had faced significant challenges and hardships in her life. However, this does not excuse the violent and heinous crime that she committed. The assassination of Kyle Ewell was particularly brutal and unprovoked, and the fact that LaVonna May and her accomplices were all found guilty reflects the severity of their actions. While the minimum term of 20 years in prison may seem harsh, it is a necessary punishment for such a senseless and brutal crime. It is concerning to note that LaVonna May showed little remorse for her actions and even made threatening comments towards the victim's family. This lack of empathy and remorse highlights the need for education and support to help prevent such crimes from occurring in the future. Overall, the case of LaVonna May, Jack Williams, and Kaylee Woods is an example of the destructive and devastating consequences that can arise from senseless and violent crimes.